Since the 1970s, hip-hop has been a cornerstone of Black expression, resistance, and identity. But more than 50 years later, is the art form still doing the political work it was born out of? Here to help us tackle that question are hip-hop journalist and cultural critic Dart Adams, Boston Globe columnist and deputy managing editor for Culture, Talent, and Development Jenee Osterheldt, and Daniel Laurent, founder of Black Dollar. Dart, I'm going to start with you. You are our resident hip-hop music historian here at the table, but tell us when hip-hop first came on the scene in the 70s, where was that political messaging coming from?
So a lot of people ask this question, and the thing is that just hip-hop's existence alone was political in nature, even if it was about a party, because you're partying in a space that has been bereft of any possible kind of help, aid, anything from the state or the government. So in the midst of having nothing, we created something. They're completely leaving us here to our own devices, so we're going to create a culture and bring each other together. But it came out of there was a fight, a man died, Black Benji, and the Ghetto Brothers had a truce meeting at Hoe Avenue Boys and Girls Club in December 1971. And from there, it spread where they went to all the housing developments, all the projects, and said, you can pass freely, and you can have parties, you can have events at the PALs, you can have parties at the parks and everything else. And this is where hip hop becomes, hip hop, where people are going from function to function to function, traveling with entourages that are giving them protection. Later, the Black Spades become the Zulu Nation. So even when hip hop was about partying, it was political in nature. Now in 1981, all that changes when Sylvia Robinson commands, the guys to do a song, that changes everything, the message. They always said, nobody wants to come to the party to hear the problems, right? Nobody wants to dance to someone else's troubles. And the message completely changed all that. And the success of the message led to people actually addressing issues in their music. And Curtis Blow doesn't get the credit for what he did in his early albums. Tough, Party Time with a question mark, talking about the issues in the South Bronx. And that's
sort of tucking those messages in.
Yeah, and that's where it started. It wasn't something that was initially there from the beginning. Like even Grandmaster Flash's message, his verses at the end of the message, they were tucked away in a song he did super rapping in 1979, where he did it fast and nobody even caught on to what he was saying. So hip hop has always been political, even when it wasn't.
And so Jenee, how did we see that evolve in the 80s and the 90s?
I mean, I think in the 80s and 90s, that's when you start to see more women in the game, whether it's Salt and Pepper, Queen Latifah, MC Lyte, Moni Love, and so forth. And we could just go on, and I'm not gonna get into that, but I think that's when there starts to be more of a female expression, more feminine expression. I think you also see more empowerment, and then you start to see the branding, with Run DMC and Adidas, and I think they laid kind of the groundwork for sort of what we see set up the global stage of, I don't want to say the commercialization, but the commodification, the commercialization of hip hop.
Daniel, Jenee mentioned this commodification, right? And we did sort of start to see this shift, especially in the early 2000s, of the glamour, right? The hip hop glamour. So much of that was led by, as we know, Sean at the time, Puffy Combs, people like Jay-Z, et cetera, et cetera. And so, did that really help or hurt us?
I think it's both. Jenee said gift and a curse, right? I think what I've realized is everyone has a different foundation and they start differently. And I think it's not a one size fits all. For me, I grew up and my parents were heavily involved in street activities, right? However, and I don't know how this sounds, it wasn't promoted to me, right? And the very opposite was expected of me. However, I seen it. I seen things on the table. I seen all that. I loved NWA. So when everyone was listening to KRS-One, I was listening to NWA. I know all the lyrics front to back, right? However, that didn't drive me into participating in certain activities, right? I could always appreciate, one of the records that Jay-Z does that everyone hates, Sunshine, right? Which is the big, samples like Babyface, whatever. I like that record. It is what it is, right? It's not gonna change the world, but I like it. I think that those people that you mentioned, you know, Jay and Puff, and for me, they inspired so much of what I do. And so it's hard for me to discredit those things because it took it to a different level. However, I think it also appealed to people who didn't have a love for the culture. And then they came in, and whether it's bottom feeders, and we see it in all different parts, right?
And when you say didn't have a love for the culture, what do you mean?
I think what we're experiencing, at least in my opinion, is there are people who do not have, you know, it's a money grab, right? So, and that's in every industry. So just like there are people that have a love for comedy, right? And they've worked in clubs with 5 people, and they've traveled and made, you know, $10 and a drink ticket, right? They love it. But then you see people that's on TikTok, and you can maybe get some additional followers, and it's a money grab. I feel like Mike Jones and Soulja Boy, for me, changed a lot, and not in a good way.
You're talking about my generation.
Mike Jones, who, because I grew up in a time where hearing people, I heard Rakim, I heard LL, you know, I heard Ice Cube, and I knew I couldn't do that. I could make my own version of it.
But
right?
you could do Mike
I could
Jones,
do what I could do,
Mike Jones.
yes. But when you hear Soulja Boy and you hear all these different people with a lower talent level, and
That's not fair.
And it's
No,
That's not fair,
because here's the difference too. Because I explained this to somebody, I taught a class, and I was like, what Soulja Boy did when he's playing the beat at the same time, he's recording it straight off this thing and go straight to MySpace. If you go back to 1984, 1985, Schoolie D in the studio alone with Code Money, playing the beat and rapping straight into the tape, and then cutting it and then releasing it on vinyl. It was a similar thing. The only difference is the landscape was vastly different, and the audience was vastly different. And
being
the
able to
entry point,
capitalize,
but the entry point was vastly different. You couldn't just go online, download something, get wares, and make a beat.
Yeah.
You had to. It was alchemy. You know.
But I'm talking skill set.
Yeah, but the thing is that skill set is it's a relative, it's a subjective and relative thing.
It's subjective, but also even in '84 and any other date that Dart pulls out as the historian he is, there will also be a rapper of that era that did not have the skill set that was doing some very elementary.
Great.
You know, I literally yesterday was listening to Easy Does It. No, We Want Easy. For whatever reason, I just was like, yeah, I want to hear this record. And I sang it word for word. It can't be more simple than that. My point is just the simplicity of, like, Sexy Red. Whenever I talk to people, right, my daughter loves her. And right? She's like, oh, it's a vibe. Maybe.
I'm a justice for Sexy Red kind of person, but go ahead. I'm gonna let you
But,
go.
like, you know, for me, I'm always, like, Young and May can rap. To me. Right, the skill of
I'm
rapping.
aunties for Big Glow, like.
But Glow can rap. It's a
It sounds
difference
like what you're
of
saying
like I
is-
always love the effort when someone's trying and being creative and not just.
But what makes it so that they don't feel they have to try anymore?
Yeah.
The industry.
I just don't think it's either or, it's both and. I
Yes.
think it's always been both and. We've always had lyrical dexterity as well as simplicity. We've always had problematic raps that reflect the reality of being problematic humans,
I think the
as
difference
everybody
is that we
and
had
we've
it at the
always had
same
messaging.
time.
Yes.
But does
On
it,
the mainstream.
Yeah.
and I wonder if the music itself has to be the political message in the vein of women being able to express themselves freely, whatever way they want to, whether, you know, they're always going to be judged. I wonder if that is a message in itself. And Dart, I heard an audible response.
Yeah, because here's the
over there.
thing. There was always, you could have a BWP, you could have a HWA, you could have a Latrim, you could have all this. You could have Salt and Pepper, Silk Times Leather, but you always had a Queen Latifah. You always had an MC Light. You always had a Queen Mother Rage. You had a mix. Bahamadia. You had a variety. And everything stopped after 96 and 97 with the signing of the Telecom Act, and things were completely split. So if you were on this side doing these type of things lyrically, or if you were on this side doing these type of things, you were pretty much not going to be signed to a major. The last major label deal given to a political rap group was Dead Prez, and that was by Loud. And after they did their one album in that deal, they were no longer on the major anymore. So that's where everything cuts out. And it's like, you have to think about, there was a time we were listening to rappers who grew up during the counterculture era, who were in directly kids, their parents were in the civil rights movement. So they were putting speeches by Malcolm X. They were putting speeches by like Angela Davis. They were putting Kwame Ture speeches, all these different things, Ross Baraka things in their rhymes, and they were like incorporating them because that was their upbringing coming up in the Afrocentric era. That's why in the 80s and 90s we had all these groups.
And it also sounds like that was striking the difference between just rapping something and actually living it.
Yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, but it wasn't the totality.
We still see that. We see that with Corday. We see that. Like, I don't like the idea that it's like just because someone doesn't move the way I move. Like, I'm never gonna have sexy red motion. That's not how I move in life. However, the idea that sexy red might not have something else to say, like Cardi B. One, never do Jay again. That's one. But two, Cardi
Yikes,
has been very successful in being all things at once. Like, she's sexy, she's herself, she has agency. She's a mother. She interviewed a host of political candidates during presidencies. She actually does her research. She knows American history, and she's also all those other things too. Like it's like some of that sexy red infusion is in there. So it's like,
and it represents someone's experience, like the whole I'm the Trap Selena is a whole
experience. Like
identity.
Saweetie, very smart, very, it's like people see her and they have this.
But she doesn't put that in her music.
No, but it's just like, why should she have to?
Yeah, therein is a political
I don't go around dropping clips bars and all my like dope boy lyrics every time.
But you'll wear a t-shirt
you're doing
now.
an interview and you're wearing it. So
no.
For me,
but here's the difference. The industry now, which is in rubble and on fire at all times, does not allow on the mainstream level for artists to be political. And also these last two generations of artists don't have the capacity on the mainstream level to do it. The ones that do have been doing it for the last 15, 10, 20 years. And they won't stop doing it. They're active in the community, they're doing those things. They don't get the praise. But when I go to different institutions of higher learning and things like that, or I work with people there in grassroots organizations, that's who always shows up. They get on the plane, they get on the bus, and they come from wherever they are in the world. That's how I got to know them all. And they're hip hop as hell, but they're not considered even on the radar for rap music.
I think one of the problems that we have both intergenerationally and just within the hip hop conversation is we don't make enough room for both and. It's always like who can be. Even with Kendrick, it's like Kendrick can do a whole halftime show that's radical and political as hell, and then I talk to radicals and they're like, that wasn't radical enough.
Well, I think it's interesting, and to Jenee's point, I think it's hard, like it's always hard for us to get on the same page. Case in point, we mentioned earlier Sean Puffy Combs, who obviously just had this entire trial involving, things that he was allegedly able to do because of his power and influence.
He did that.
And yet,
Yeah.
And
I also think he learned it from people who actually aren't from hip hop.
Yes, and at the same time, in our community, there were debates, and there was all of this questioning about, well, how are men? What's the state of black men right now, where we can't all see this very clearly, right? And I guess I wonder, like,
it's layered.
It is layered, and why hasn't hip hop been able to tackle those social issues?
Because the issue is that hip hop will attack social issues at its base. Hip hop culture will. The rap industry never will, because it's about money, and everybody's intrinsically tied to everybody who made them money and kept them making money and kept them afloat even when the money started drying up. So they feel like they can't speak on this person because I have dirt on you, I have dirt on you, my hands are bloody, I made sure your hands were bloody. So if you talk, you coming down with me. And that's not just the issue with hip hop, it's an issue with the rap music or the music industry, period.
I wouldn't just say rap. I would say music, and I would also just say corporate, and I would also just say America. Like America, like waters its daughters with sexism and gets mad when bitches bloom. Like this is a nation that does not love women. It doesn't even raise people to like women. This country raises men and people in general to attain women, to attain girlhood, to dominate girl. Even when you're taught to respect a woman, it's under the guise of attaining her. Respect her.
It's conditional.
It's very much transactional.
We're seeing that reflected at the very top with our with our president. Who so many people in hip hop have aligned themselves with. Face many questions and doubled down on this alignment.
Absolutely.
Well, again, it has to do with the money. If I have an issue or I have a weird case, whether we're talking about crypto, whether we're talking about sexual assault or sexual abuse or some scandal, they know that there's somebody who will call them and say, hey, I can clear this up for you if you align yourself with this person. And you look at the names of the people.
You think that was why Nelly was up there at the Crypto Bash?
Absolutely.
Now, Nelly, I think that was probably a financial. Oh wait!
He got
arrested in the thing.
Again, if you look at,
basically,
if you just look, who has a weird case, who is an odd case, and who needs the money, and somebody who did something for a bag, and they still need it now, because
he was
again,
facing sexual assault.
The money in the
got a weird case. Why is he around?
The money in the rap music industry has dried up significantly. And people, that's why we don't have the messages in the music like we used to, because once we got to the Pastor Cavassier era, that's when everybody realized, in order to make any money, I need to have a corporate sponsorship, or I need to have synergy with some corporate entity or some brand, because the music on its own isn't gonna get it.
Now, Jenee, how do you feel like the media has played a role in the politicization of hip hop?
I mean, the media has always been. Listen, I love what I do. I'm a journalist. I love what I do. And I pattern myself after Dream Hampton. That is why I do what I do. Dream don't even love hip hop no more, at all, and will say it clearly and poignantly.
Hey, she told me 5 years ago when she came to Boston.
Yeah, that she's very adamant about that, and I do get it. But for me, it's like I'ma always love this. I'ma always love it. I see Tyler, the Creator, drops an album. To me, that album in itself, its existence is a radical thing. And I don't understand why we're not writing about it the way we wrote about Janelle Monáe. Like Janelle Monáe, we wrote about her and was like, oh, freedom, liberation, joy. Tyler just created an entire new character in the middle of Chromacopia that is pulling out disco funk, Big Daddy Kane, sexy dance stuff. And we're not talking about it in the lens of Black boy joy the way we should, or the lens of pleasure and the liberation the way we assign to Janelle
And so
Monáe.
much of that is still influenced by the masculinity.
Yes, by the masculinity and homophobia, and then also the media. The media loves to, excuse me, one of the reasons I created Beautiful Resistance is so that we can celebrate the joy and the light and the beauty and the fullness of Black people and culture. But the media as a whole, the media as a system, loves to fester in the muck and the mire, and loves to paint things as negative. And we see, and I don't even want to just use media as journalism. Look at movies, even white movies. When a white character is doing some wild stuff,
what's the music?
The music they play?
Right.
What is the person? What is the nefarious character? Where is the place that they're at where it all happens?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I saw Highest to Lowest this weekend. I did not think it was Spike Lee's best movie, I will say, but Denzel plays this music exec, A$AP Rocky's in there, and in so many of the scenes, even the chase scenes, they're playing this upbeat classical music, which was confusing to me, but it was a really interesting antithesis.
No, and it's important because he did that on purpose, because that's very Spike, and it's it's really important to kind of take that type of symbolism and brainwashing, because it's been used from the very beginning, and Dark can speak to this. Literally, as soon as hip hop became a thing, you could look at any movie from the late 80s, 90s on, and it's very specifically been used to sort of demonize, and people like to write about it when it's bad. I remember Trey Songz got into some mess, as he does, and I remember seeing a headline, and it was rapper Trey Songz ain't no rapper.
No,
but they like to assign negativity, and it's not that I'm not saying I will never be oh, hip hop has no. Of course we have negativity, but there's a disproportionate need to only cover the culture through that lens.
So where can we look now for the I don't even want to necessarily just say positive, but I guess the type of hip hop that you all feel is getting back to those political roots.
I mean, to me, the political hip hop that's political in nature like that has always existed and has existed under our noses for the longest time. I think the problem is that it's never promoted. It's not pushed in the mainstream media. Why would they? It doesn't make them any money. But I think that that's like one of the disconnects for me, because growing up, I could look to the music that I heard on the radio, that I went to the record store to buy, that I saw on Rap City, that I saw on Yo MTV Raps, that that gave me, you know, my voice and spoke to me. Like Run DMC could come up and it could bring out Public Enemy. Public Enemy will bring NWA on tour with them and talk to them backstage, and they would be on the same tour together, and they would be speaking different things, but like some of the message, and you had all this stuff that doesn't exist anymore on the level that we had it. So I don't think that young people even expect to get political messaging or advice from artists. I think they look directly to the people that do that every day, whereas we expected it.
What about locally here in Boston? Because we know this is such a grassroots hip hop scene. I'm thinking about people like Oompa, Red Shades, the list goes on. And are there any other artists you'd point to?
I mean, in addition to Oompa and Red Shades, I would look at Nay Speaks. I mean, I think Nay is just, there's a reason why, you know, you see Rhapsody next to Nay and next to Ike. And, you know, what Ike has done with Words Speak Life in general, and like helping a whole generation of kids in Boston have access to DJing, to rapping, to writing, to poetry, to music. Amanda Shea's not a rapper, but Amanda Shea, spoken word. Like, we have a beautiful scene here.
I think, you know, there was a time where, and shout out to him, Exit Fame is doing a lot, right? And it's interesting because that grind and that effort, I kind of remember that of like, oh man, right? But I think that his story, he is sober now, right? So that's what he's driving, that's his passion. And he's being very intentional about connecting with people that need therapy and in rehab and making sure that they feel a part of it, right? So they are his champion. Though that type of story is what I appreciate. And so even the music and the things that I do, even with Black Dollar, right, it's all intentional messaging. And so everything that I'm saying is on code, right? And I think that what also I'm saying is if no blood was shed and somebody didn't sleep with your spouse, it's not about nothing, right? There's a lot of like infighting that's happening where, you know, even in a domestic violence space, there's people that don't get along, right? That saddens me. But through me doing something, I'm having both of them work with me, so inherently they're working together. It broke my heart with the Black Weekend, right? That it's called Boston While Black, the Nubian Square. It's all these different things, and you look on main media, like it wasn't like I didn't see anything on the news.
That's not true. It was all over the Boston Globe.
I did see that. I
sent kids out there. I sent reporters out there.
So when I looked at the news that night.
You mean TV news?
Yes. Yeah. When I looked at the news on the TV and I didn't see one blurb of it. And I'm like, oh man, but I'm not surprised. But then for me, I'm like, yo, we got all these different things. How come we were not out there doing? And so I put up a thing, and so, yeah.
Well, all the more reason to have folks like Jenee, myself, and the two of you and many others out covering and speaking truth to the power that we know. Well, Dart, Jenee, Daniel, thank you each so much for being with us. And at a time when politics are really hard to avoid, we'll see whether hip hop continues to do that job. Big thanks to each of you. Thanks to you for watching, and stay rooted.